Hey everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Andrew Hayward. I am the culture editor at Decrypt. And today we're going to talk about DeFi for good. You know, we're at a crypto conference. I'm sure a lot of people here believe that DeFi is good. But how about DeFi being used for good? I think we should explore that. So I'd like my panelists to introduce themselves. Let's go down the line.
For sure. Hey, you guys. My name is Jess Salomon. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I actually came into the crypto ecosystem back in late 2017. I was the first community manager at MakerDAO. I started a day after DAI launched. Really exciting to see how that project has evolved into a sort of thriving ecosystem in some ways. Post that, I have started doing strategy work, including for Aave, if you guys know that one, 1inch, and now working on a couple different things, including Archway, which is actually an incentivized smart contract chain for Cosmos, and Union Finance, which is a permissionless credit network. So hopefully it's good.
Hey guys, my name's Seena. I work at Chainlink Labs. I head up our new market product development department. So basically anything that's not DeFi related, my team works on. Things like banking, capital markets, ESG, insurance is big for us. Do a lot of work in telecom, sports, media, entertainment. We'll probably get into all that today. Prior to that, I was at Coinbase. I was at Coinbase for under 3 years, doing something similar, working on new market development. And prior to that, I was at earn.com, previously known as 21.co. The Bitcoin mining chip. So glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robbie Heeger. I'm president and CEO of Endaoment. We are the first fully on-chain 501c3 nonprofit community foundation. We offer donor-advised funds and community field of interest funds. Have done a little under $50 million in total impact and sit on about $20 million in assets under management that have all been permanently committed to philanthropy. We specialize in taking donations of any crypto asset with a liquid market, and we turn them into a tax receipt and dollars that can be directed to any of the nation's 1.5 million 501c3 nonprofit organizations.
Nice. So, you know, DeFi for good is a pretty broad talking point here. So, you know, why don't we go down the line in reverse order this time? And why don't you tell me what that means to you?
DeFi for good to me means leveraging the software and services that are being developed, the financial primitives, the different tools that we now have in our tool chest to onboard organizations that are chronically behind when it comes to technology adoption, and to make sure that the people who are recognizing significant gains from these new asset classes are able to turn around and take some of that capital and operationalize it for impact. And so to me, you know, building the tools that leverage these new Legos and provide a service to the people who are building these new Legos that allows them to bring some of this capital into their local community is what it means to be using DeFi for good.
Hard to beat that, but yeah, I mean, I've been saying the same thing since the Coinbase days. We believe in banking the unbanked and creating an open financial economy. So the way we do that is really by making smart contract-based applications. A big one for us is insurance. So smart contract-based insurance claims where remittance and settlement is done through triggers and actions that are tied to specific claims within an insurance claim. We do this for crop insurance. We do this for flood insurance in developing countries. In Nigeria, we do that with Lemonade. And we're continuing to expand to different lines of insurance across different jurisdictions. This allows the average individual to have a honest, transparent insurance policy. I'm sure some of us have had bad experiences with insurance. And there's much more of that. We do a lot of work in ESG, whether it comes into carbon tokenization or measuring carbon credits or emissions. We do this in an on-chain, transparent way by utilizing Chainlink's decentralized Oracle network to provide that transparency back to the individual users. Last thing I'll say is stablecoins, wrapped assets, CBDCs. We create a decentralized way to verify things that back collateral. We don't need to trust a specific entity to let us know that a dollar is backing a specific asset, but rather we can trust the system and believe in truth as opposed to trust and have it be done on chain in a very transparent way. So a lot of things for me, but not as good as charities and DAOs, unfortunately.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is actually something I think about a lot. I think right now the way that we see DeFi, it's largely used in somewhat of a degen matter. So speculation of different assets, leverage. Not at all inherently bad. That's totally good in many ways. However, are we actually thinking of DeFi as a more efficient Wall Street, or is it possible that it could be a sort of more sustainable, well-functioning, far-reaching ecosystem? And I think the way that we actually achieve that is introducing more primitives that aren't just about importing dollars into DeFi. Like most of the stuff that we're doing today, it's people like buying things on Coinbase, Robinhood, buying more assets, and then kind of betting on them. But if DeFi is not really just a stock market, then it makes sense to introduce primitives that allow us to build within that actual circle of DeFi. So that's why I advise this cool project called Union Finance, which does permissionless credit, in which you can actually go ahead and vouch for your friends or just people that you trust to pay you back, and they have their own sort of use of capital that they can put to productive use and you can put to productive use. We do that in the form of DAI. Big fan of DAI, decentralized stable currency. I think that's another good thing.
So DeFi and crypto can be complicated. There can be scams, there can be hacks. How do we make this so that it is not just for degens? How do we make it more approachable, more secure, more accessible?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think that there's a bit of a meme in crypto that the UI is really bad. I don't actually think that's true. I don't think the UI is that bad. Like, it's pretty possible for capable people to use this stuff. And when it comes to hacks, a lot of times the things that do get hacked, they've been audited by a lot of really legitimate auditors. How do we sort of solve for that? Put up more like generous bounties to white hat hackers, stuff like that. But in terms of actual accessibility, I'd say just giving people tools that maybe aren't out to like make a ton of money or risk all the money that they have, but things that people that actually need money might be able to use. Like maybe there's a seamstress in somewhere else in the world that's not New York City, and she needs some money to start her business of sewing up people's clothes. So creating a credit network for her to do so, where her friends can vouch some DAI, could be a cool way to make DeFi useful for that person.
That was cool. On our side, from the Chainlink perspective, I was focusing more on an infra level. For us, we really have one job, and it's to secure the back end of multiple different protocols and smart contract-based applications. So we have one job, is to stay up. And so we see that. We've done that for DeFi for over 3 years now in a very consistent way. We're now taking that cross-chain. We're trying to make that interoperable. So when folks want to design hybrid-based smart contract applications, you can do this in a secure manner. We've been focusing really hard on our cross-chain interoperability protocol, also known as CCIP. We've been focusing a lot of it on the research and development phase of it, and the idea is to create that same security and reliability that DeFi has across our oracles, but to do it across cross-chain. And when folks can do that, we can move assets back and forth. We can do commands and triggers. You can utilize certain layer 1s and layer 2s for its benefits, and opens up the possibilities of different applications that we can design. That's how we're looking at it from a Chainlink angle.
Yeah, I'm a big Chainlink believer, and I think like what Chainlink has done really successfully is made it really easy to understand the Oracle problem, right? And what DAI has done really successfully is make it really easy to visualize yourself being banked by a protocol rather than by a financial institution. And so for me to make it less about degens, it's almost like coming coming down from the clouds a little bit. There's kind of this feeling of like what happens in crypto happens in like kind of above the base marine layer, and there's all these people on the ground that are like, there's these crypto people up there, and I don't really understand what they're doing up there, and like somebody needs to kind of bring the magic beans down to earth, you know, down the beanstalk, bring the magic beans, and hand them out to everybody in a way where they're like, oh, I actually want some of this magic bean. And so what we think a lot about at Endaoment is simplifying what's happening, rather than trying to complicate or you know, like add complexity to what people are using crypto for, to actually make it a little bit more entry level, a little more use case that people can understand. And so we think a lot about DeFi for Good as a really great translator of the value of crypto to everyday people. Right? That if they can understand the ability of a decentralized crypto native community foundation to more easily route dollars to nonprofit organizations, like in the same day as a wire payment rather than over 3 weeks as a paper check, right? Even if we're leveraging old infrastructure to do the last mile, if we're doing it programmatically from stablecoin to wire payment within hours rather than within weeks, there's this translation moment that happens where they say, oh, this isn't something that's up in the clouds. This isn't something that I can't understand. I can actually be a part of this movement now, and my organization can be a part of this movement now without feeling like we're exposing ourselves to a ton of risk. And so for me, the crux of translating DeFi from Degens to the regular Joe is to actually scale back the amount of like layering of different Legos and like, you know, the amount of interoperability or, you know, cross-chain, you know, onboarding that has to happen. Like, come and meet these people where they are with a use case that leverages crypto, and then they have a great, delightful experience with it. And then you say, did you know that you use crypto right there? And they go, whoa, like, I didn't know that that was possible. And that's the aha moment that we're having with nonprofits, you know, in the hundreds at this point at Endaoment. And that's also true for Degens, who are like, how do I like make this more meaningful for myself? And we say, well, what if you gave some of these away? And like, don't overcomplicate it. Give us some of it. We'll turn it into dollars. You pick some organizations. You give it out. And they go, wow, I had this incredible, meaningful experience with an organization that I grew up, you know, spending my after-school time at, and now they are bullish on crypto, and I don't feel like such a lonely degen anymore because my local, you know, summer camp has accepted their first crypto donation. And I think that can really be a huge translation moment. It can be this connective tissue between the what's happening in the clouds and like the everyday perception of crypto writ large.
That's a perfect transition. I was, you know, my next question I was going to ask about the perception, because, you know, the last question was more about sort of the technical side of things and the risk involved. But even if we don't think that crypto is too hard to get into or that it's too risky, there are a lot of people who are still going to believe that because of what they've heard, the sad stories or the, you know, the tall tales in some respects. So, you know, how do we elevate the good stories, the good sides of DeFi, and get those stories out there so that maybe they can start to outweigh the bad stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I suppose you need to create more good stories. So just thinking about ways that we can create not just a more effective stock market that's on the blockchain, but also more effective businesses that a lot of different people out there can actually use and participate in. So just to shill one of the other projects that I work on here, the incentivized smart contract chain, Archway for Cosmos. One of the things things I find really cool about it is that it sort of obfuscates the need for people to launch a token. So why does it do that? Because it actually splits up network fees, to which the dApps receive a certain, like 30% of the fees, and validators get 70%. So rather than having to have their own sort of business model, they could maybe do something a bit more interesting, like benefit people, and they'll still be able to fund themselves, get paid for the amount of use that they're getting, which I think could actually be pretty cool. I've worked on like a number of different projects now, 1inch, Aave. One of the interesting things I found about 1inch is like trading on 1inch, there's actually a lot of users. You get great prices on there. However, the 1inch token, I don't feel actually reflects how good the product really is. And so in many ways, I think creating a way for people to not have to launch a token if maybe they don't need to, or not that people don't need to, a lot of times they do, is a good way for users to think of crypto not just as a place to buy like financial assets, but just have something they can really use.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I'll take it back to just more good stories, things that actually drive better outcomes. So those better outcomes can be more access. For us, I would say a big one for us, different jurisdictions have a hard time tracking electricity usage. It's kind of interesting. There's like huge spikes in certain jurisdictions based on usage, you know, how much electricity is available, yada, yada. And so people are pretty shocked every month on their electricity bill, what they're actually getting. And so what we're doing in a few jurisdictions actually is helping put that energy consumption data on chain. To Robbie's point, building a Web 2-based application that makes it easy for this individual to track their energy consumption. So it's not like I got to go on like an Etherscan to go see this kind of thing. And providing it, connecting it to a wallet address that they control and can pick and choose when they're actually paying a 5x, 10x, 20x premium on the electricity that they're currently consuming. This is designed to help people just have better track on it. People have better, you know, understanding on what, if I need my electricity on, do I need the air conditioning on right now? Is it actually worth 25x what it would cost normally? And so that basic transparency are applications that can help lots of people. And those are the kind of stories I think, Andrew, we need out in the space.
Yeah, I don't think any feature or technical progress is going to change perception, right? Like, we just spent all this time, you know, dealing with media requests and questions about the environmental impact of Ethereum, and, you know, like last week, snap our fingers, consumption's out the door, and we're not getting a medal for our, you know, energy savings all of a sudden, you know. Perception really changes through examples that get a lot of attention. And, you know, how many people here hold People Token or participated in the Constitution DAO? Show of hands. Yeah, you know, we've got a few out there. Like, for a lot of people, that was their first interaction with the DAO, right? And it gave them this thing that was like, again, you know, taking it out of the clouds and bringing it down to earth and saying, I can watch this Sotheby's auction and see if we win. And, you know, we didn't win. And, you know, we're sorry, but
it still felt like this kind of great unifier in the moment. Like, everyone was following. They were like, this could happen. And it didn't, but it still meant something to people.
Right. And I think, like, as an organization, so Endaoment played a role in the Constitution DAO. We were the fiscal sponsor of the DAO itself. First fiscal sponsorship of a DAO that we know of. And our lawyers had a great time writing that agreement. But, you know, like, part of what made that such a success is the fact that that the Constitution DAO got a chance to bid on the document. And what a lot of people don't know about that is, without the Endaoment fiscal sponsorship, Constitution DAO was set not to pass Sotheby's KYC. And so instead, myself and our board of directors went through the Sotheby's KYC process. And, you know, yours truly was doing the bidding on the Constitution. And, you know, like, I think realizing that it's not just about the tech that you put out into the world, but it's the little things that you do to create marketing stories, to create opportunities for people to participate in new ways that maybe aren't obviously profitable, or not profitable at all, right? Or maybe even not for profit in the first place, right? Like that, prioritizing that actually really does help to change perception. And I think like the more we can look for those opportunities and the more that we kind of put aside the tech for a minute and say, it's cool enough that this capital got amassed through a juice box. We don't also need to yield farm it and, mix it through Tornado and, like get all these people to understand what's happening at, an opcode level for it to help change perception. That if we ground ourselves in just a narrative that the regular person can follow, that there's now something other than shadowy supercoding out there in the conversation about what's happening here.
Right, but it didn't actually work out, did it?
I would argue it did.
Okay.
We have tens of thousands of people who had a positive first experience with the DAO, where like they bought into something, were able to get all of their money back when it didn't work out. Yeah. Right? Like the customer service was top notch, despite the fact that there was nobody in charge. Right? Yeah. Like I would argue that it totally did work. It took the billionaire class putting forward their, king villain to come and, take away that win from us. And in a lot of ways, I think it demonstrated how DAOs can be responsible actors, how DAOs can exist in the real world and have an impact on real world institutions in a real way. And so, like, no, they didn't get the document, but like, I would say the user onboarding growth hack that the Constitution DAO was for crypto at large was a huge example of DeFi for good.
No, totally. I agree. I think it was such a great proof of concept for DAOs and definitely a narrative that people found comprehensible and could really understand.
No, it's certainly a bummer that they didn't win.
But it'll be less of a bummer when that kind of shit does work out, and then that's when we're really going to move the needle.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
Robert mentioned, big positive use cases, and one of them, DeFi for good is relief funds, fundraising for the Ukraine invasion or for disaster relief. Can you talk a little bit about how, what makes crypto such a good fundraising vehicle for things like that?
I can go first here. We've done a few humanitarian relief efforts, both with corporate partners and without. The more successful ones are without corporate partners. We've raised $3 million for humanitarian aid in Ukraine. And that's just a product of the speed at which crypto can move, I think. In general, crypto is a very values-oriented population. They care a lot about liberty, about agency, about sovereignty. And so when we see, a bully kind of attack, like a Goliath attack a David, like we did with Russia and Ukraine, there's a lot of people, not to mention developers who live in Ukraine, but users of crypto who live in Ukraine, and they kind of stood up and they were like, "Hello, this isn't chill," and rallied to the cause. And the several million that we raised is a small percentage of like the 80+ million that went to various different causes. The Giving Block had their own landing page. We had one. There was Ukraine DAO, Unchained DAO. There was the Ukrainian government and all these different vehicles. And so a couple of things that you notice from there. One is speed of collaboration, right? It's really easy to very quickly align capital incentives and, put things into a like oversight-friendly environment. Two is that you see a global like access point for anybody to be able to come in and give, right? So normally there's like platform specific restrictions on who can give. here we have anybody with an internet connection, here's an address, right? And that funneled a lot of stuff as well. And I think the last thing that you see is just the ability for developer tools to result in a cornucopia of different approaches, right? So like the whole spectrum of different ways to fundraise, whether lethal versus non-lethal versus, you know, direct action versus tax exempt versus, like non-governmental organizations versus, you know, large organizations versus small organizations, right? Like, because these are composable tools, the opportunity to do anything and everything with them in humanitarian crises is really inspiring and exactly what the crisis calls for.
The last time I saw Robbie was on a squash court in San Francisco in 2013. He's the exact same. Hasn't changed at all. For us,
Whatever, Seena.
take us back to that squash court. For us, actually, when we work with these things, with these different charitable organizations during crises, like to Robbie's point, it is nice and helpful to know that we can provide wallet addresses to people on the foot. We can send payment almost in real time. There's no silo period. There's no escrow period. We don't have to worry about counterparty risk. We can get the funds in the right people's hands in the time of need right away. We're trying to get a lot more of these going. There's a lot of doubt and lack of trust in this part of the world and this industry, and a lot of people aren't working with charitable organizations. Robbie probably knows that the best. And the only way to really open that gap is for people to see what happens with their money. When you're investing, when you're donating your money, where does it go? Who's getting it? And being able to know that they're getting it right away, not 4, 5, 6 weeks after a war's begun when people are dying for food, is a really big deal. It's a really big deal. It'll change the lives of everything. It'll change how wars operate. It'll change how we do disaster relief. And so that's a huge impact, and that's what our team focuses on primarily. Like, we really just focus on these big, large impact global use cases like that.
Yeah, this actually isn't something that I specialize in, so I'd have to sort of check out the numbers to see how effective a number of these different DAOs, like Ukraine DAO, have actually been in providing relief. But one of the things that was really exciting for me back in the day was when UNICEF started accepting DAI as a form of donation, because like these guys said, a lot of people, they have a good amount of crypto, and it's sort of easy to send out. What could also be cool, I remember with like some of the hackathons I did like back in the day with 1inch, is putting out bounties where maybe people just create some sort of widget where a part of your swap, like if you get some positive slippage or something, it can go directly to a charity of your choice. So I think like just the fact that crypto is a sort of more effective financial system in some ways, it's awesome that people can integrate ways to give back to stuff that they care about.
And kudos to 1inch, who actually do have a donate button on their exchange. And I think, you know, we're really looking forward to seeing more app developers fold in composable impact. And a lot of that has to do with the tools that are available for that kind of impact as well. And so, you know, like as the tool set becomes more robust, as we do more development work on that front, I think we'll see more hackathon participants saying, oh, we use the Endaoment SDK, or we use the Giving Block API to, you know, fold in an automatic donation of yield that splits this way and this way. And, you know, we've done a lot of work with art blocks to do like mint splits at the time of mint, when art blocks like prints money, yo. Like, they are so successful. And the fact that like we've been able to stand there and be like, yeah, just split with our address, and then we, you know, like we'll route it wherever you want it to go. You know, like just that has been a huge aha moment for their artists to be like, yeah, I would love to offset some of the carbon from this mint, or I would love to, you know, help my local community out in this X, Y, and Z way, or this war is happening and I want to help. And so, you know, we're seeing a lot of people want the tools, and it's just a matter of us bringing them to market. And I think you'll see us and a lot of others in the space do that like imminently.
Awesome. Well, we are out of time. This was an awesome chat. Robert, Seena, Jessica, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
so much, you guys.